Going to be much colder than of late.
We do want to hear your stories.
Oh, he does smell good, actually. Arnold Schwarzenegger, thank you very much.
Start your day the BBC Breakfast way on BBC One and iPlayer.
Hello, it's 7 p.m. in London. This is The World Today, our latest news headlines. Here in the UK, the Labour Party set out their policy on dealing with small boat crossings in the Channel, saying they would scrap the Rwanda plan straight away if they come into government.
The voting has been completed. Please lock the machine.
Israeli fury as the United Nations General Assembly backs a bid for enhanced Palestinian status at the UN, potentially paving the way for effective recognition of a Palestinian state. Israel says member countries are shredding the UN Charter.
It's been a day of some striking words and actions on the floor of the General Assembly, granting a lot of symbolism and a little bit of substance to the Palestinian cause over the objections of the Israelis and the Americans.
I'm Marianne Mashiri, live outside the arena in Malmö, where the Eurovision Song Contest will take place tomorrow night. Controversy surrounds the Dutch act. Will Jos Klein be allowed to perform tonight? We'll have the very latest for you at the end of the programme.
And also coming up on The World Today. What sounds like clicking or maybe Morse code is actually sperm whales talking. Hello, welcome to The World Today, an hour of international news from the BBC. Well, we start here in the UK because the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has said if his party wins power, it would scrap the Conservatives' Rwanda policy straight away. He's been in Dover outlining measures that Labour would introduce to tackle cross-channel migration. But Sir Keir Starmer refused to set a target for getting the numbers down, saying he would not put false numbers on his plans. New figures from the Home Office show more than 9,000 people have crossed the Channel in small boats so far this year. Now, that is a rise of 35% on the same period last year. Our political editor Chris Mason has been speaking to the Labour Party leader.
Dover this morning, the latest arrivals picked up by Border Force in the English Channel. The ambulance a reminder of the perils of a crossing. A few miles away, the man who thinks he has a solution. And just look who's following in Keir Starmer's footsteps. The local MP Natalie Elphick, who walked into this week as a Conservative MP and ends it sitting with Labour. Sir Keir's main idea is this.
Border Security Command will bring together hundreds of specialist investigators, the best of the best, from the National Crime Agency, the Border Force, Immigration Enforcement, the Crown Prosecution Service, and yes, MI5.
Listening, responding, the Prime Minister.
As far as I can tell, all the things that we're talking about today are all things that we're already doing. Crunching through the backlog, having more law enforcement officers do more. That's all happening already. We announced all of that more than a year ago.
There is then a battle of ideas and a tussle over sounding tough.
These vile people smugglers are no better than terrorists. They're a threat to our national security and a threat to life. That means new powers that will allow us to shut off internet access, close their bank accounts.
Labour want to use counter-terrorism laws to smash people smuggling gangs, as they put it. But how much difference would this make?
So I think there's an open question here about what precisely these anti-terrorism powers will amount to, whether it will make it considerably easier to police smuggling gangs, and ultimately whether it will have a material impact on getting small boat arrivals down.
Next then, time to scrutinise Labour's ideas. Keir Starmer, you say that you want what you call a border security command. The Prime Minister set up a small boat operational command. What, in practical terms, is the difference?
Well, let me tell you, the Prime Minister's operation, which is good, is a processing operation here, coordinating with those in France about the boats that are actually coming across. But I want something much more ambitious than that, which is to set up a command that will take down the gangs that are putting people in the boats in the first place.
How can you be certain that the government's Rwanda scheme won't be a deterrent? Maybe, just maybe, it'll work.
I think it's a gimmick. I think it's an extremely expensive gimmick, £600 million to remove just a few hundred people, less than 1% of those that arrive by small boats. I do not think it's going to work. I'm not going to come into government, if we're privileged enough to do so, and flog a dead horse at great expense to the taxpayer.
A deeply complex issue over which Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak grapple for credibility and long for solutions, as partial as they may prove to be. Chris Mason, BBC News, in Dover.
Now, the latest from the United Nations, and in the end, the vote was overwhelming. The UN General Assembly backed a Palestinian bid for enhanced status at the UN, paving the way for eventual recognition of a Palestinian state. Here's the moment that the resolution went through.
The result of the vote is as follows. In favour 143, against 9, abstentions 25. Draft Resolution A/ES10/L30/Rev1 is adopted.
Well, really, the vote is symbolic because of the US veto at the Security Council. But even so, Israel has reacted to that with absolute fury. Its foreign minister said the vote was, quote, an absurd decision. That is, a prize for Hamas. And just take a look now at this. This is Gilad Erdan, who is Israel's permanent representative at the UN, saying that member countries have effectively shredded the UN Charter. This was part of his speech just ahead of that vote.
Today, with sick and twisted irony, the very body established to prevent evil is now welcoming a terror state into its ranks. What would Churchill say if he were alive today? What would Roosevelt think? They are turning in their graves,
Well, let's go straight to our North America correspondent, John Sudworth, who's at the United Nations for us, where that vote took place. Well, let's start off with that Israeli reaction and, well, very colourful display there from the Israeli permanent representative with that portable shredder saying that member countries had just shredded the UN Charter.
Yeah, I mean, those kinds of protests, the gestures on the floor of the General Assembly aren't new, of course. Viewers will be familiar with perhaps the most infamous of them all, Nikita Khrushchev banging his shoe on the podium all those years ago. Was this on a par? Social media reactions somewhat mixed about the effectiveness of these kinds of gestures. But, you know, what we can be certain of is that Israel, it was all designed to signal its deep unease and anger over this vote. 143 states backing this resolution. Now, we ought to say, Ben, as you've already pointed out, this is largely symbolic. The General Assembly does not have the power to confer full membership on new states. That power belongs only to the Security Council. It vetoed, the US vetoed an effort to get that status for Palestine last month. This was a General Assembly taking matters into its own hands. But I think it does two things today. One, it reiterates that call for Palestine to be given that status, but also in small practical ways it does enhance the status it already has as a non-member observer at the United Nations. So this vote means that from now on Palestine will be able to take part in more of the debates. It will be able to appoint its representatives to some of the committees and propose some agenda items. They may seem like small steps, but it is significant enough. And the point the Israeli ambassador was making is that in Israel's view, This is tantamount to giving Palestine the trappings of statehood outside of the normal processes. And that was the symbolism, if you like, of him shredding up the UN Charter.
John, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for that analysis. That's John Sudworth there at the UN. Well, in Israel itself, its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that his country can stand alone. That was after the US President Joe Biden warned he will stop sending some American weapons there if there is a full-scale Israeli assault on the city of Rafah in Gaza. He's already paused a shipment of munitions. More than 1 million Palestinians have taken shelter in Rafah, most of them women and children. Already fled the city. Israel began what it... Our correspondent reports now from Jerusalem.
Day of Israel's ground operation in the south and following. Seven months of war have totally upended life in the Gaza Strip, displacing most of the population.
He did, and this should come to Prime Minister Netanyahu. President Biden warned him repeatedly that it's the United States. It's not an unlimited blank check. The president's been clear that the United States supports the defense.
Farewell from PSG.
Russia started a new wave of offensive actions in the...
So there's been would look to launch some sort of a ground assault. And what we saw today was not large enough in scale to be a serious attempt to seize the city of Kharkiv, which is the second largest city in Ukraine. And Russian troops concentrated in the... They are probing
and are on their way to, dramatic push or offensive in the coming weeks.
Well, I think the most realistic scenario would be to look at what we saw in 2022. Ukraine now is suffering from shortages of ammunition.
Pistols bikes to its butchers. Better news from less bad news on the prices of everyday staples.
No, it seems to be okay. It seems to have plateaued a bit, so fingers crossed it shouldn't, we hope, go up anymore. I just hope that prices will stay as they are, to be honest with you, because it's been tough few years for a lot of people.
Visiting a new investment in MRI scanners in Oxford, the PM says a better than expected economy offers some vindication for his own plan.
So look, it is going to take time for people to really feel better, but I'm confident that today's figures show that we now have momentum. The economy has real momentum. It's hard to argue with that.
There's some arguing that you're being delusional, that you're gaslighting the British public on the economy.
Well, Liz, all I'd say is that typical from the Labour Party. It's just being incredibly negative about the country, negative about the economy, talking it down, when this isn't just me saying that. This is the Bank of England governor yesterday saying that we turned a corner. This is the Office for National Statistics independently who has put out these figures that show we have the joint fast highest growth rate in the G7.
Both main parties say they want to fight the general election on the economy.
This is the first parliament on record where living standards will be lower at the end than they were at the beginning. This is no cause for celebration, no cause for a victory lap. My ambitions for Britain are so much greater than merely just coming out of recession, which is all that Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt have achieved.
Hi, John.
Hi, how you doing?
Back in Bristol, on the longest street of independent shops in the country, it's the carpet shop that could really show if confidence is returning.
People are thinking twice when you tell them the full price. They go, okay, maybe just have 3 rooms and not the stairs. So it's not like it was. It's a much harder environment at the moment. I would disagree that we're coming out of recession. I would say we're just sort of teetering.
Across the economy as a whole, the brief recession is now over. Some normal growth is back, but up and down the nation, households and businesses aren't yet fully healed from the economic scars of a tough few years.
OK, plenty more to come. Do stay with us here on BBC News.
Hello. After another very warm and mostly sunny spring day today, what are the chances of this weather lasting through the weekend? Well, at first, It is going to be more of the same, mostly dry on Saturday, spells of sunshine. It will be very warm, but by Sunday, signs of a change, some thundery showers as Atlantic weather fronts start to edge in. But in the short term, this area of high pressure just about holding firm. Underneath that high through tonight, we'll have largely clear skies, and it is possible, particularly across the northern half of the UK, that you might get a glimpse of the northern lights, the aurora borealis. There's been a lot of geomagnetic activity, a solar storm heading our way. So do keep an eye to the sky. It could be an impressive display, particularly the further north you are. Certainly staying dry with those clear skies, although an area of cloud likely to affect some parts of eastern England. Also some areas of low cloud close to Shetland. Temperatures overnight not dropping far, generally between 7 and 12 degrees. So into tomorrow, fine start, some good spells of sunshine, any early cloud in eastern England burning back towards North Sea coasts. Now there is just a small chance of catching a shower, especially up over high ground in Scotland. Could be the odd hefty one, the odd thundery one, but most places will stay dry. In the sunshine, temperatures in Glasgow, for instance, up to 24 degrees. Western counties of Northern Ireland particularly could just see 1 or 2 showers, 1 or 2 across the far north of England, but for the bulk of England and Wales, spells of sunshine, just a bit of patchy fair weather cloud, maybe a bit murky for some North Sea coasts, but highs of around 25 degrees. Now, as we head through Saturday night and into Sunday, our area of high pressure begins to loosen its grip, and these frontal systems will start to push quite erratically in from the Atlantic. So on Sunday, the further east you are, a decent chance of staying dry with some very warm sunshine, a bit murky for some coasts of eastern Scotland. But out towards the west, we will see some thunderstorms starting to pop up. Quite a hit and miss, but if you catch one, could give you a lot of rain in a short space of time. Still, though, very warm indeed, with temperatures up to around 25 or 26 degrees. Those temperatures certainly will not last. Into next week, a much cooler feel. Temperatures generally between 15 and 18 degrees. Showers or longer spells of rain turning much more unsettled.
I want Hip Life to be that good story that lifted black folks in Africa and all over the world, gave young people a voice.
It's part of being an actor, because I always say as an actor, you can't be a control freak. You have to be willing to give up control.
So I like this idea of a live piece of art. And I just like this idea of making invisible visible through art.
Sometimes you can have really serious portraits, but you've got such a great laugh. I feel like I want to capture some of the candid nature of your personality.
Opera House can and must be many things. It shouldn't cater just to one audience, and it shouldn't be focused on just one corner of the repertoire. It must do everything and be open to the interests of many different people.
Inspiring arts and culture. Watch now on iPlayer.
Traveling can be so much more than a holiday.
It's about diving headfirst into new experiences.
And seeing the world with fresh eyes.
Where each destination tells a unique story.
And every encounter brings a new perspective.
Because all of these amazing places
are made so much richer by the people who live in them.
So unleash your spirit of adventure.
And join us for a deeper understanding of the world.
The Travel Show. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
Hello again, this is BBC News. A look at our latest headlines.
The voting has been completed. Please lock the machine.
Israeli fury as the United Nations General Assembly backs a bid for enhanced Palestinian status at the UN, potentially paving the way for effective recognition of a Palestinian state. Israel says member countries at the UN are shredding its charter. Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle kick off an informal tour of Nigeria. And the Dutch Eurovision contestant is stopped from rehearsing by organisers. We'll be live in Malmö in Sweden with the very latest. Well, more on that news that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have begun their visit to Nigeria. Here they are, Prince Harry and his wife Meghan, being greeted at an event in Abuja, the start of a 3-day trip. which is at the invitation of the country's Chief of Defence Staff. Well, Harry will attend a reception to honour military families. Meghan will co-host an event for women in leadership. And for more about this, I've been speaking to our Africa correspondent, Simi Jola Osho, who is in Abuja for us.
Well, it's been a lively day here in Abuja for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. This is actually their first time in Nigeria. As you saw in that clip, they went to a school where they were enthusiastically greeted by school children and traditional dancers, and they spoke about mental health. The Duke spoke about how it's important to speak up, especially if you're feeling emotions such as grief or loss, and not feel the need to bottle it in. Behind the scenes, they looked very relaxed with the kids. I mean, Meghan even opened up about her own children, talking about how her daughter Lilibet, who is turning 3, enjoys singing and dancing, and talked about how her son Archie, who is 5, enjoys construction and toys around that. This visit actually stemmed from a conversation that Prince Harry had with a Nigerian military chief back at the Invictus Games last year. The hope of officials here in Nigeria is that this visit could lead to the country eventually hosting the Invictus Games sometime in the future. And I don't know if you mentioned it there, but this trip also is a bit of a personal significance for Meghan, who discovered that she's 43% Nigerian after taking a genealogy test 2 years ago. She revealed that on her podcast, and during the visit at the school, she even told the kids that she sees herself in them. So they were very happy to be there. Later in the afternoon, Prince Harry went to a military rehabilitation centre with Nigeria's military, and tomorrow they will be doing activities around another cause that they are passionate about, which is helping wounded and injured service people and veterans.
Well, let's take you back to one of our top stories now and talk about that issue of small, overcrowded boats illegally crossing the Channel from France to England. And a BBC investigation has tracked down the mastermind behind thousands of channel crossings for migrants in small boats and on lorries. Now, his real name is Barzan Majid, but he's nicknamed the Scorpion. He is one of Europe's most wanted people smugglers. Our reporter Sue Mitchell set out to find him with the help of aid worker and former soldier Rob Lorry. Now, it was a dangerous search that began in Nottingham, where Barzan Majid used to live and work as a mechanic. This picture is from back then. Rob Lorry now picks up the story.
What piqued our interest in this individual, the Scorpion, was we did a podcast a couple of years ago, The Smuggler's Trail, and when we were researching that and when we were making that podcast, this one name kept coming up time and time again, which was the Scorpion. And it seemed that the Scorpion was in contact with many migrants and refugees around Turkey and around Calais and around Dunkirk. And there seemed to be a lot of movement under his name. So myself and BBC journalist Sue Mitchell sat down and kind of piqued our interest, and we thought, well, let's have a closer look at this guy. When we started scratching beneath the surface of who he was, it just went on and on and on. The extent of human trafficking that his network was carrying out around Europe was phenomenal. So we tracked him through France, into Germany, into Turkey. Eventually, with tip-offs from contacts I have around Germany and Iraq, we were able to locate him in Iraq. And yes, we went to Iraq, and without his knowledge, we managed to find him. And I put some questions to him.
So that was Rob Lorry, and this video shows the moment that Sue and Rob Lorry sat down with the Scorpion, as he's known, and spoke to him in a shopping mall. Let's have a listen to some of that interview.
How many people do you think you've smuggled through the UK?
Maybe 1,000, maybe 10,000. I don't know. I didn't count.
Thousands of passengers had your number in their phones.
I'm telling you, yeah. You're right what you're saying. Nobody forced them. They wanted to. They're begging. They're begging the smugglers, please do this for us.
You know, right? You know that smuggling through Europe is illegal and highly dangerous. You know that.
Of course.
And yet you did it.
I'm telling you, I've done them kind of things. I've done it.
So that was the Scorpion talking to Rob Lorry and Sue Mitchell. They began their search for him after speaking to a 6-year-old girl called Miley, who was rescued from a migrant boat as her family tried to cross from France to the UK. This was the dinghy she was on, and because Miley speaks English, she was the one to call the emergency services, and she begged them to come and rescue them. This is her speaking about her ordeal.
I say, please help. We need patrol. I say, please, we need patrol. We need help. Then I say, my mom is feel bad, feel sick. Then the police come here, then take us out at the small boat. They take me and my mommy some better blanket for my mommy to feel better.
How many children were on the boat, Miley? So there was you and your brother? And four children?
Yeah, 4 children.
6-year-old Miley there, the human face of what the people smugglers are doing, really. And the number of people illegally crossing the Channel by boat from France to England is relatively small when you compare it to the numbers arriving elsewhere in Europe. Let's just talk through the figures, because according to the International Organization for Migration, almost 145,000 migrants travelling in boats across the Mediterranean arrived in Greece, Italy and Spain last year. Now that compares to just over 29,000 people making the crossing to England. Well, I've been talking to Lawrence Hart, who's from the International Organisation for Migration, who explained just how lucrative these migrant crossings are.
We're talking about a business that is highly lucrative, of an industry that has an estimate revenue of around $245 billion per year. And this is only an estimate. It's a highly flexible and complex industry, which counts on a number of small, obviously, pushers, if you want to compare it with the drug industry. And rarely, and that's why it makes big news when you catch the big fish that is behind the kingpins that are behind this. It's an industry that has capacity to adapt, especially when there is police that is patrolling certain areas rather than others, and are able to move into different locations. It has procurement abilities to procure boats, dinghies, engines, life vests, and the like. So it is a very sophisticated group of people. And one of the concerns is obviously that the revenues of this industry are reinvested then in other illegal activities.
And you compared there the people smugglers to the drug dealers, and I suppose like the drug dealing business, it's so hard for the authorities to crack down on, isn't it? I mean, what do you see as the best ways of doing that?
Well, definitely information is key, because this industry also has a very sophisticated technique of approaching people. It resorts to social media. It resorts to people who press on the weaknesses of people. They're very soft-spoken. You can also watch videos on YouTube of some of these people using very, very reassuring language to people who are interested or considering the possibility of resorting to a smuggler. They make it extremely simple. They say that it's easy and it doesn't cost much and everything is organized, a little bit like if you were going to a holiday yourself to some place where, the agent is being reassuring to you.
That's Lawrence Hart there from the International Organisation for Migration's Coordination Office. Now, Pirandita Khan, who was found guilty last month of the murder in 2005 of the British police officer Sharon Beshnevsky, has been jailed for life. The mother of 3 was shot dead as she and her colleague responded to an alarm at a travel agent's in the city of Bradford. The judge said that PC Beshnevsky's courage and commitment to her duty that day cost her her life. Our correspondent Danny Savage was in court.
He was the man who fled the country to avoid arrest for the murder of a police officer. In 2006, he got on a plane from Heathrow to Islamabad. But justice eventually caught up with Pirandita Khan. He was deported from Pakistan and today given a 40-year minimum sentence for the murder of PC Sharon Beshenivsky, a mother and stepmum killed on her daughter's 4th birthday.
Police Constable Sharon Beshenivsky's courage and commitment to her duty that day cost her her life. The sentence I pass is no measure of the value of the life that has been lost. That is beyond measure, and no sentence I pass can put right what you have done.
This was the scene on that awful day in 2005. PC Beshenivsky had been responding to reports of a panic alarm at a travel agent with her colleague, PC Teresa Milburn, when she was shot dead just after getting out of their patrol car.
The 18th of November 2005 is a date that will remain etched in our memories forever. What started as a happy, special day to celebrate Lydia's 4th birthday was a day that ended with devastating and sad consequences due to the callous actions of Pirandita Khan and his associates. Since then, the 18th of November is no longer a birthday celebration for Lydia and all of us, but now a day of remembrance and memorial.
The court also heard a victim impact statement from Lydia Beshenivsky. She says since the age of 4 there has always been a void in her life, and she remembers her mum as a hero.
All those years ago, 2 mums set out to work. 2 ordinary people doing extraordinary work for the public, protecting them and keeping them safe. One didn't return home, and one didn't return home in the same way.
In the minutes before she died, she was talking about the birthday party later that day for her little girl. The man responsible for her murder will never see freedom again. Danny Savage, BBC News, Leeds.
Well, still to come on The World Today. We're going to be live in Malmö in Sweden with all the very latest news from the Eurovision Song Contest around the world and across the United Kingdom. This is The World Today on BBC News. Back to the Eurovision Song Contest now, and the Dutch Eurovision contestant has been stopped from rehearsing by the organisers. The European Broadcasting Union said it was, quote, investigating an incident reported to us involving the Dutch artist. He will not be rehearsing till further notice. That's what the EBU said. Well, let's go live to Malmö now in Sweden and join my colleague Mariam Mashiri, who is there for us, covering all the twists and turns of this particular song contest. And every day it seems to bring another controversy, Mariam.
It does indeed, yes, Ben. The 68th Eurovision Song Contest, and it is one of the most controversial that we've ever seen. The protests over the Israeli entry being allowed to compete by the EBU, which happened yesterday. We're expecting more protests to happen tomorrow. That caused a lot of controversy and a lot of issues for the EBU organisers. The protests were non-violent, they were loud, but they weren't violent. There were thousands of people who attended, and as I mentioned, there are more planned for tomorrow. Anger amongst those protesters that Israel is allowed to compete. And then today we had very confusing controversy surrounding the Netherlands entrant, Joost Klein. He was due to rehearse earlier on today, along with all of the other competitors. But at the very last minute, and I mean the very last minute, his act and his rehearsal were pulled. Now, we're not sure what's going on, but I do think that in the last few minutes we've had an update from the EBU, from the organisers of the event, and my colleague, our culture correspondent, Charlotte Gallagher, is here. Charlotte, what have we heard from the organisers?
So the EBU are essentially saying that Joost Klein will not perform tonight. So this is a performance for the juries, the international juries that give their points. They're made up of music industry professionals. He will not perform. The EBU is still investigating what happened. However, they say his performance in the second semi-final will be judged by the juries instead. So he's not out yet. He could still perform tomorrow in the final. But at this point, they're still investigating what happened. There's been rumours on social media that there was some kind of altercation backstage, but nothing has been confirmed. And Dutch media have said some of the rumours flying around are not true. So at this stage, we still don't know what happened that caused Joost Klein to pull out of the rehearsal earlier on today. He was about to go on stage. His props were on stage, and then he himself didn't end up on stage. Very, very strange situation.
OK, Charlotte, thank you very much indeed for that. Charlotte will be keeping across all the very latest. But look, the EBU, the organisers of the Eurovision, have wanted this to be a celebration of music. And in particular, this is a really important year because it marks the 50th anniversary of when ABBA, the famous Swedish group, won the Eurovision Song Contest in Brighton when it was held there. And I'm very pleased to say we can cross live now and speak to David Courtney, who is a huge ABBA fan. But also, David, you were at the Brighton Dome that day when ABBA won the Eurovision Song Contest. What was it like?
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. It was my hometown, and Leo and I were there together. We were guests of ATV Music that I think at the time represented the Olivia Newton-John entry to the contest. And yeah, we were there. In the afternoon we were there. I remember it very clearly, in the afternoon at the Grand Hotel, and I saw these four people sitting across the room from us in these very gaudy satin outfits. And I said to Leo, I said, "Who's that lot?" And he said, "Oh, that's the Swedish entry." I went, "Oh, right, okay, all right." Well, you know, we were living in the time of the 70s where glam rock, so everybody was really dressing up, so it wasn't anything really highly unusual. So yeah, it was great fun. It was a great atmosphere in Brighton from that time. Yeah. And
was there a lot of surprise that they won?
Well, not to me. I was sitting in the audience, and with Leo, and as soon as I heard the ABBA song, I said to him, "That's it. It's a done deal here." He said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, that's a hit record. You can hear it. You can usually tell within the first 8 bars, 16 bars of the song's got the hook, and it came straight in there with the opening line, and I knew it. I just for me, that's what I do for a living. So it was just obvious to me that was going to be the one, and I was right. No, funny, I didn't have any money on it.
What is it about ABBA, David? What is it about ABBA that makes them so popular?
Well, I think first of all, they were a great unit. They looked great, didn't they? Like the Beatles, there was the 4 of them. There was 2 girls, 2 boys, and in the case of the Beatles, it was 4 boys. But they had this look and a style, and of course the music. And what's gone on from that point onwards. With all the songs that they've written. I mean, they're probably the greatest pop act I think that has been. I class the Beatles more in rock and roll, and I think the only other one that would come anywhere near that would be the Bee Gees and all that. But the ABBA, they just kept on coming with these hits, and it's pretty incredible, really. Yeah, wonderful.
OK, well, David, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on The World Today to share your memories of that historic day 50 years ago when ABBA won the Eurovision Song Contest. Of course, Sweden have an entry this year. Their song is going to be the first one sung in the contest. Normally the first ones don't win it. The second song to be sung is Ukraine. Apparently that is called the Graveyard Slot, but who knows, there's all to be played for. This year is one of the most open competitions they've had in their 68-year history. So the 200 million people watching around the world will have a lot of fun tomorrow evening, I'm sure, when they watch the Eurovision Contest Grand Final on Saturday night. Well, look, it's time now to bring in the most important element of the Eurovision Song Contest. Me! No, I'm kidding. It's not me. It's the fans, of course. Everyone, come over here. You're live on BBC News. Where are you guys from?
We're from Edinburgh.
Oh, fantastic. So who are you supporting?
The UK, obviously, Ollie.
In Croatia. Yeah, in Croatia, of course.
What is it about Ollie's song that you love?
It's catchy, it's good, I like it. I think it'll do well, I hope it wins.
Yeah, you think it'll do well? There's been a bit of worry about mics dropping out of pockets and stuff.
I think he will do well. I think he's quite a big name in Europe and in music, so fingers crossed.
What is it about Eurovision that brings you all the way here, guys?
It's good fun. It's just everything. It's fun. Everyone has a good time. Can't complain.
And Croatia, that is just an amazing song. So fun, so catchy.
It is indeed, yeah. We're excited.
Okay, well, listen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Let me walk along this walk of fame. So you guys together? Oh, so you're on your own? Where are you from?
I'm from Ipswich, Upper Town.
Right, is everyone supposed to cheer? Yay!
We just got into the Premier League, so.
Did you? Let's talk about that, actually. Let's not. Sport Today is later in the show. So tell me a little bit about who you're supporting.
Croatia, Spain, and obviously the UK.
Okay, and what is it about Spain that you like?
I love the message. It's reclaiming a really negative word and turning it on its head. It's super catchy. It's kind of like an 80s vibe, and it really challenges like loads of stereotypes, but it's just so awesome.
And who's going to win, do you think?
Croatia.
Okay, you sound very confident there. Hello, and you guys all together? Now, I'm going to take a wild guess that you guys are supporting Greece! Tell me a little bit more about why you think the Greek song is, or do you think the Greek song is the best one?
Of course it is.
Who's the official spokesperson here?
We're a collective.
Oh, you're a collective. Okay, so you have to say at the same time, we love Greece.
We love Greece!
Okay, so look, Greece is not one of the favourites. Not really one of the top favourites. Oh no, I've offended the whole of the Greek nation. I apologise. Okay, Greece is amazing. I love Greece, but you know, Croatia, Ukraine, France, they're kind of like. I can never say no to a beautiful song. Let's go.
Να μη θυμηθώ τις ώρες που κόντευα να τρελαθώ. Marina!
So what does that mean? Well done, well done, well done.
What does that mean? It's. You know what? It doesn't matter because it's catchy, it's fresh, it's very original, it's unlike anything people have heard in Eurovision. So vote Greece.
Vote for Greece!
What would it mean to you if Greece won tomorrow?
It would be very, very special. It would be, I think, the anniversary of 20 years or 19 years from our last win, so it would be very special.
Was it that long ago? Oh my God, you guys need to win. Come on, it's been too long.
Plus, this year's artist, she's amazing, and her name is?
Marina!
But also, if you win, I get to go to Greece next year, so it's a win for me as well.
So vote Greece, and next year you can be on a Greek island, relaxing.
Of course, here on BBC News, we don't vote for one particular country. We love all countries, all countries, all countries. So listen, guys, all of you, tell me, what does Eurovision mean to you?
It means just a bunch of people from all over the world that have all come to celebrate music and the same ideals, and we're just here to have a really good time, and people who have never been to Eurovision don't always get the subtlety of that. Just come along and have the best time.
It's just having a good time with everyone, loads of people.
And the Greek contingent?
We refer you to the previous answers.
A great party of nations that come together to celebrate music.
Do you know, that actually is very, very important. That's the key message, isn't it? The EBU, there's been controversy, there's been strife this week, I guess, but what the EBU really want people to understand is that this is a music competition. People are united by music. There is a big grand final happening tomorrow, and the key thing for you guys to remember, there'll be 26 countries vying out for your vote, singing their hearts out in the grand final. The winner will then get the Eurovision Song Contest next year. That's a big deal, isn't it, to get that? Greece are hoping for Greece, the UK hoping for the UK. Yes. Who knows? I'm going to say goodbye to you, Ben, from here in Malmo. Thanks so much for watching The World Today. Bye-bye from us. Say bye, guys.
Bye!
Woo! Woo!
Hello. After another very warm and mostly sunny